Welcome to this session, and I'm Jonna K. Squires, Ag Business Coordinator at Mid-America Technology Center. And I love my job every day. I get to connect people to agricultural resources, and I know farming is not always glamorous. We have cattle and a couple hundred acres, and I'll leave here and worry about projects at the farm. So I don't get to look and do this every day of my life. But through my job and through being in the industry, I've gotten to meet a lot of great people. And I taught agriculture education, followed in my dad's footsteps before I went to the technology center. And the funny thing is, and I'm going to tell you, I met Jerry Irby, which is here with Pedal Pushers. And I met her several years ago. She had a post on Facebook, and I'm like, hey, I want to check out your farm. What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we connect. Her dad was an ag teacher at Guthrie, knew my dad for years. And so I immediately felt like I had this family connection. And so that's what I love about agriculture is you can find people that are connected in some really unique ways. Corey Warner, I have met because we have a specialty crop grant where we're providing some training opportunities through ODAF, and she's applied for some of those. And this session is on scaling it up, and what I like is this whole panel today is in different places with their business, okay? So Corey has been in business, and I'm going to say 2 years. Claudia has been in business over 40, 50?
No, not that old.
No, I'm saying the whole family. I'm saying grandparents, fourth generation. Yeah. So we know there's a long legacy here with Claudia. But she's still young. Okay. And then we have Windrift Farms. Yeah. Windrift Farms, and these gentlemen told me 17 months. Okay, so what I like is, and who went on the tour yesterday? Some of you went on the tour yesterday. So some of you got to see some of these locations, right? So what is unique is you're going to hear about their story, a little bit about their journey and where they're at. And I hope somewhere between all four of their businesses, you're going to glean something, or you're going to get inspired, or you're going to say, aha, I have a mentor or somebody I can reach out to you. Okay, and so I'm going to start off with Corey. I'm going to let her start first. And then we'll just go through the group.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
There we are.
Good. And then I think just hit
Okay, perfect. All right. Hello, everybody. My name's Corey Warner.
Got it back? There you
go. Okay. I'm the farmer at Tanglefoot Farm. We are between Blanchard and Tuttle, pretty close to Bridge Creek. And I would classify my farm as a suburban micro farm. We have several neighbors. They all have small acreages like ours. And we're about 20 minutes from the city, so we're definitely not, out in rural Oklahoma. And I call it a micro farm because we own 1.97 acres, and about 1.5 of that is suitable for agriculture. The rest of it is sort of this little wooded creek area on the north side of our property. And right now I have just over 1/4 of an acre under cultivation. We primarily grow vegetables. I do have a little bit of herbs. And this year we did sort of a trial run on cut flowers. And as Jonna mentioned, we're in our 2nd year of commercial production. So we bought our property in 2018. And when I got it, being a commercial farmer was like not even on my radar. I'd been bitten by the homesteading bug, and I wanted cows and pigs and ducks and geese and chickens, maybe an alpaca or two, and a garden, but was not really planning on, actually selling any of that. It took most of 2018 to clean up the property. It was kind of a mess. And then we spent 2019 building our house. We did most of the work ourselves, so it took the whole year. And I did put in a little tiny garden. It didn't do very well. It kind of died of total neglect. But we have a really small house. It's 900 square feet and a barn. We actually lived in the barn from April to July so that we could stay on the property to work. And finally, July, we got air conditioning and one room in the house finished, so we were able to move in there for the rest of the year. We'll go back. So it was really fully 2 years before I even got to readdress the whole I want to be a homesteader thing. And so in 2020, we had soil testing done on several sites on the farm, picked our area, found out that pretty much all the soil on our property was not very high quality. We're in an area that's considered highly eroded, so very little organic matter, very little in the way of the nutrients that the plants actually needed to grow. So we wound up cover cropping almost all of it. I did put up about a dozen raised beds so that we could at least get some sort of, garden thing going. And then we did get chickens. This garden did a little bit better, enough to keep me happy. I was able to do some canning. We had fresh vegetables through most of the summer. But the main thing that this early garden taught me was that I really enjoyed working on my farm way more than I enjoyed my full-time job as an operating room nurse. I'd been a nurse for about 25 years, really was looking for a change at that time, and kind of started daydreaming about being a full-time farmer. Honestly didn't know at that time if you can make a living on 1.5 acres, but I've met a lot of people who actually are doing that very thing. They farm anywhere from 1 acre to 3 acres, and they do that very successfully. So I started looking at what can I do to sort of make that dream a reality. And the first thing I did was I found a mentor. This wasn't anyone I knew personally. I followed her on Instagram, and she had been doing a market garden for about 3 years. So I just hit her up on Messenger and said, hey, you're kind of doing what I hope to do in the near future. And she was more than willing to visit with us. We spent about half a day at her farm looking at her setup, and she answered 1,000 questions for us. But she really was the person that, through the course of the first year of our market garden, that I was really able to lean on and get some expertise and advice from. And the thing that's cool about having a mentor is they've already made the mistakes that you're getting ready to make. So if you can lean into their expertise, they will save you a lot of time and trouble. She was also a great resource on where to get seeds, where to find organic products, how to get into the farmers markets. And since the first full year we had in production was also the year of the worst drought in 128 years in Oklahoma, it wasn't an ideal time to try and start a market garden. So she was really there to kind of prop us up when we felt like we were really struggling. Okay, what did I do? All right, and the second thing that I did, because I kind of get to be all over the place unless I've got something to kind of keep me on a narrow path. So I actually sat down and took the time to develop a written farm plan and figure out really what I wanted to accomplish on the farm and how we were going to get there. There's a lot of research that went into this. It took me several months to get it done. But really, the main thing that we wanted to do was to grow food for ourselves and our communities, and to help restore the local food shed by teaching other people to do the same. We're still very young, so we haven't really had a lot of opportunity to go into the educational aspects of that. We're just still working on production. But that farm plan I look at it frequently. It gets reevaluated every season. What are we going to grow? How are we going to grow it? What practices are we going to use? Where are we going to buy our seeds? How are we going to process it? What safety practices do we follow when we're processing it? And how do we market it? Not everybody needs a written plan. Some people can keep it in their head. I have too much stuff in my head already, so I rely on the written plan. Now, the last thing I did in September of 2020 was I applied for an EQIP grant for a high tunnel. And you're probably familiar with it, but EQIP is a program that lets farmers and ranchers put conservation practices in place on their farms. And one of those practices is a high tunnel. A couple of rules: you have to grow in the ground, you can't use it for like a propagation house, can't grow cannabis, and it is a reimbursement program. So once you're approved, you have to build your house, and then they'll come and inspect it, measure it, and then issue your funds in a week or two after that. If you happen to be a veteran like I am, you can get half of your reimbursement up front, and then the rest after you're inspected. I went that route because I was able to find a local manufacturer who agreed to take a split payment. So we put a 30 by 60 high tunnel on our farm for less than $800 out of pocket. And if you're new to this game and you don't have a high tunnel, run, don't walk to the nearest computer and apply for that grant. This high tunnel was a tremendous game changer for us. Until we had that, we did not have the production that we needed to even think about going to market. It's not a huge high tunnel like some of them, but it more than tripled our production. And the other thing is you're able to go all winter long, so you add 5 months to your growing season. And by the time we rolled into spring of 22, not only did we already have crops growing in the greenhouse, we were able to open up the other areas, and so we had a huge jump in our production. That winter we did sell at the public market in Oklahoma City. But in the spring of 22, because we did have quite a bit more growing, we went ahead and applied at the Norman Farm Market. And we completely renovated the garden area. I've taught my husband that fences are temporary structures. They are not permanent. So we move things around a lot. And then we ultimately built a building that we called our Prep and Pack. That big jump in production that I mentioned also made it glaringly apparent that we were lacking in some pretty important infrastructure. At this point, I was still using hoses and sprinklers to water everything. It's a terribly inefficient way to keep your crops watered. It's also very wasteful. I was having some soil quality issues that I was happily able to address with a company called Eleva Soils. They mainly work with marijuana producers, but they were very helpful working on the biota of my soil and the organic content. And then the other big problem we were having was I did not have enough cold storage for what I was producing. So I was using the fridge that I had bought for produce, thinking that would be enough, and then a whole bunch of ice chests every week to keep things fresh so I could get them to market. One of the things I've struggled with mentally, being a market gardener, is scale. You don't realize how big you have to scale up when you go from personal production to actually selling. And I just didn't have my brain wrapped around that quite enough, so I didn't have what I needed. And the other problem was I didn't have a dedicated processing area. I was processing in my kitchen, which is 10 by 12. It was terribly inefficient, and I'm dragging bugs and dirt into my house every single week. And one day, probably about midnight when I was trying to clean up, my husband said, you know, if you're gonna keep doing this, we need to find a better system. And so ultimately that's what we did. We spent some time talking about, you know, did we want to just do it incrementally and kind of nickel and dime it, or did we want to try and put something in place that would support us all the way up to the size that I want to be, which is ultimately I hope to have about 1.25 acres under production. We wound up going the lighter route. We took out an FSA micro loan to fund that. And I know, especially in the homesteading, but to an extent, I think in small farming, there's kind of a thought that, you know, you need to bootstrap everything. And I think that's viable for some people, but it kind of depends on where you're at in your life and what your goals are. When my husband and I had this conversation, I was 57, and I wanted to scale up quickly. I don't have 20 years to bootstrap a farm. And I really did want to get out to the farm full time. And the interest rate on our FSA loan is 1.4%. It's very minimal. They're not a bank. They're not out to make a lot of money on you. So in my mind, they're a very viable funding source for small farms. We addressed several things. First of all, the irrigation. We ran PEX line to every field and house that I had up at that time. So we were able to install a basic irrigation system. We used drip and timers to keep most of our fields watered. Also wanted to expand the area that we had for crops under plasticulture. So we bought 2 Farmers Friends Caterpillar tunnels. They're both 14 by 50, so almost doubled the amount of area we had under plasticulture. And then we built what we call our Prep and Pack building. And that took care of cold storage and processing issues. Our Prep and Pack is a 16 by 24 tough shed. They put it up for us, and then we finished the inside. When you walk in, where those green buckets are is kind of a staging area, so we can get all the produce in from the field. We then have a 3-well commercial sink with a bubbler in it. That's what that little jacuzzi-looking motor is. And then we've got our drying rack and a packing table. And then we have a 16 by 10 walk-in cooler that we built using a CoolBot, and it keeps it anywhere from 41 to 43 degrees. And you can build a CoolBot cooler for about 1/4 of what an actual walk-in cooler would cost you. I mean, the last picture is a little 8 by 8 retail area that we have, and we'll talk some more about that. This pack and prep building has been a godsend. It has made my life so much simpler, and having an adequate storage facility has been a big blessing as well. One of the things, when I started building this Prep and Pack, it occurred to me that there might be guidelines out there somewhere that I needed to be following when I was putting all of this together, and that research led me to the ODAF website. They do have a lot of regulations and recommendations for people that are selling food to the public. If you're small like I am, you're not required to follow those guidelines. If you get big enough, you are required to follow those guidelines and must submit documentation to prove that you're doing that. But as a business person, I know when I'm selling to the public, you are incurring a certain amount of risk and liability anytime you sell anything. And certainly I want to mitigate that risk, but more importantly, I wanted to make sure that the produce I was taking to market and selling to families was actually safe to eat. So I went ahead and signed up for their Producers Food Safety Program. It's $25. They give you this enormous binder of reference material. And after that class, I did take the time to develop a food safety plan for our farm. Also signed up, you register your farm with ODAF to make you eligible for their other programs, and I invited one of them to come out and take a look at our operation and get any recommendations they have for improvement. They did have some tweaks for our growing areas that we implemented, and then they signed off on our prep and pack. I've recently signed up for a program that they have called the Local Food for Schools program, and that is very in line with our mission to restore the local food shed. And it basically, they act as a food hub so small producers can sell their produce to schools and food banks. And interestingly, the entities that buy from that program are actually given subsidies from the USDA, so it increases the food dollars they have to spend, and they're able to deliver, better quality food to, the kids in the schools and folks that are using the food banks. And then the last thing, or ODAF, that has been a help for us is they also offer grants and loans. It's a grant up to $10,000, and after that, it's considered a loan. We have an application in right now for Farm Diversification Grant. I'm optimistic that we will be approved for that. I should find out, I think, by the end of November, maybe. And the other one I wanted to mention was the farmers markets. We sell at two right now. We sell at Scissortail and we sell at Norman. And those have been great resources for us, particularly the Norman Farm Market. As John had mentioned, they teamed up with MATSE to offer a farmer's block grant program, and they've offered scholarships to new farmers like me so we can take some of the online courses. I'm brand new to agriculture. I mean, my mom made me work in her garden when I was a kid, and that was about the extent of my experience. So having some expertise to learn from has been very helpful. Particularly the Market Garden Institute class. If you're wanting to be a market gardener, I highly encourage you to figure out a way to take that class. This is John Martin Fortier. He's the guy that runs the farm. And I was able to take a lot of his very detailed instructions and incorporate some of those practices on my farm. And I'm really interested to see how that's going to affect our production this fall and in the coming years. And that pretty much takes us up to present day. Irons we've got in the fire right now. I was awarded a second NRCS grant for plasticulture, so we're putting 2 more Farmers Friends Caterpillar tunnels up this winter so that we'll have them in production next spring. We're opening 2 more fields, and the combination of that, we're basically going to double our production area. And then we are moving. Our flower beds right now are in our vegetable production area because we just did a test run. And we are going to go ahead and expand that next year. So we're moving the flowers out of the vegetable area. It'll be up front where we consider to be more of the public areas. And then where the flowers are now, we're putting in a propagation house. One of the barriers I'm running into this year is I don't have enough space for seedlings to keep my successions going the way they need to go. So I've got to have some place to grow seedlings. And then we are working with the Urban Agriculture Division or Department of NRCS to see about getting an additional CLIP grant to upgrade our irrigation. The problem we're running into is our well was fitted with a pump that was intended for a 900 square foot house, not an 1.25 acre garden. So we're going to have to address those issues. If we don't get the grant, we're still going to have to address those issues, but certainly the grant would make that a little simpler. And then we're kind of dipping our toes into the agritourism side of things in this coming year. We actually have our first farm-to-table dinner Saturday. So we've got about 40 people coming. We have a professional chef and a band and games, and people can play with the goats. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If it's successful, it's something we'll probably continue on to the next year. We are opening our little farm store to a very limited audience this fall. We've got like 3 little neighborhoods around us that we're going to send flyers out to and just kind of see how that goes. I've also been working with a local photographer. She's in Tuttle. about doing some photography sessions on the farm. And then our big thing for next year is we really want to get started on some U-picks. So we'll have the cut flowers, and then hopefully if we get the grant that we've applied for, we'll also be putting in a lavender field. The lavender is really cool for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a big agritourism draw. And we'll have lavenders for our bouquets. The flowers we grew this year, they don't have a lot of fragrance, but when people buy flowers, they also sniff them, and there's nothing there. So lavender is a really nice scent, and they're really pretty, and we can add them into there. But we don't sell, or what gets picked from the U-picks, we can still use for value-added products. I mean, herbs de Provence, you can do smudge sticks, sachets, wreaths, and we can take those to market with us or sell them online or whatever we decide to do with them. But the main reason I'm excited about the lavender field is when you have a small farm, every single inch matters. And this is going to be put in an area that we wouldn't be able to grow anything else in. The southeast corner of our property is really rocky and sandy. And it's also very hot because the sun hits our barns and reflects back into that corner. There's also asphalt there for the drive. It's noticeably warmer there. There's not a lot of things that are going to grow in sand when it's super hot, except lavender. Lavender likes sand and super hot, so we're going to take what we have and make it, earn a little bit of money for us. We do have a mentor for this project. It's an older couple that has a lavender farm down south of Paws Valley. Again, if you've not used mentors before and you're new to it, I encourage that you do. They're so helpful, and I've received a couple of no's when I've asked folks to help with a project or whatever, but overwhelmingly it seems like small farmers are very willing to help you out, and so I've not ever had a problem getting mentorship for whatever I've got going on at the time. And that's really about it. Oh my goodness. And I'm always happy to talk to anyone about farming pretty much any time of the day. Y'all are welcome to get in touch with me either through Facebook, Instagram. You can go to tanglefootfarm.com and reach us there. And certainly happy to talk to you on the phone, but please text me first because I won't answer you if I don't know who you are. But I do enjoy visiting with other folks. And that's hopefully Tanglefoot Farm in 20 minutes or less. I don't know if I made it. And I hope that there's something there that helped you out. Thanks.
She rocked it. She's making me think she's making up for a lot of time quickly. I'm like, I've been in this for a long time, and some of us didn't get ramped up in 2 years. So you guys are impressing us. Claudia and I are like, wow. All right, next is Jerry Irby. Let's see if I can escape. And we'll go back to yours. Take that one off. We found her earlier. There we go. Perfect. Awesome.
Hello. I'm not going to give John Kay a hard time, but it's Jara Irby. My dad's Jerry, so that's I've lived with it all my life. But yeah, no worries. I'm Jara Irby, and I own and operate Pedal Pusher Farms along with my husband Matt. We're a little different. We're Team Flower here. We also are Team Side Hustle. So this is our side business. We both have full-time careers. And so if I'm not talking flowers, I'm talking trees. I'm a forester full-time. So let's talk about flowers today. We started flower farming back in 2017. We're just south of Oklahoma City, near Washington, Oklahoma. And so we're in a really nice location. And we have this magical farm. It was an old dairy, and so you can see the white barn up there is the old milk barn, and we turned that into our shop where we have all of our supplies. We also have a CoolBot walk-in cooler where we can store flowers, and the Quonset hut barn that you see kind of in the back there is one of our magical barns that we have where we host a lot of our events. And so we're growing on a little less than an acre. Our low tunnels are through the trees up there, but we do have 200-foot long caterpillar tunnels that we grow a lot of our spring and late fall crops. So we grow year round. How we got started, as Johnny K mentioned, I have an agriculture background, and my husband does too, but he decided after working for 5 years with the NRCS to go to law school, and so we had one income, or two incomes, now we had one, so we decided to start growing flowers. So we were mowing this large acreage, and instead of mowing it, let's make some money off of it. So we put some flowers in, and that is kind of what we thought we would do, is sell flowers. And we are members of these organizations, which have provided us with a lot of education as well as marketing, like free marketing. So if you're looking to start incorporating that into your program, write these organizations down because they will help you. Why flowers? Well, I like the glamorous side of agriculture. I think flowers are beautiful. I've always had flowers on my porch or my flower beds. But also, I knew that there was a need for locally sourced flowers. Most of the flowers that you see in grocery stores, in floral shops, over 85% of those have been flown in outside of the country. And so there's around 7 flights a day, 6 days a week, coming in to Miami with flowers. So it's a huge environmental footprint. So we felt a need that a calling as environmental minded, agriculture minded folks, that this is a niche that we could potentially grab into and start, this business. So that's kind of why we chose flowers. And, with all that information out there, knowing that there was a market, floral shops totally would buy our flowers, right? Like designers, all these folks, we could just sell every flower that we had. We know that. Well, it didn't work. That was plan A. So what we ended up doing was opening up our farm for U-Picks. And so early on in our operation, we just had Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 and just let people come out and cut flowers. And as someone who's been in agriculture, it was really important for me to share that knowledge with people, to show them where those flowers were coming from, how we grew them, and see if they could pass that information along in their own home. So that was kind of how we started. And then so here's just a few advantages of why the U-Picks were working for us. We literally got up in the morning like 10 minutes before we opened, and we walked down there. This was pre-kid too, so that was really nice. And then, I mentioned bringing people closer to agriculture. Growing flowers is very similar to growing wheat and corn. They're in rows. They're not like we don't space them out like you would a typical flower bed. We have irrigation. We talk soils. We do all of the same thing that most market gardeners do when they're growing produce. So it's just a different type of commodity. So we had all these, U-Pick events, and now we've kind of moved to where, we wanted you to, or we knew we wanted to know how many people were coming to the farm so we could plan out our fields and how many plants to put in the ground. So we started doing pre-registration with our traditional U-Picks. And then that just kind of went up and we started offering different events. So we have floral design workshops that we offer throughout the year. And we only offer 2, and spots are limited. And so those fill up pretty quickly. But, you have your traditional U-Pick, all the supplies for the arrangements, and then step-by-step instructions. So that's one of the events we offer. And then one of our most popular events is date night on the farm. And so we partner with some of our friends who own a local grazing company. So food, like charcuterie grazing. They make these amazing boxes. And then we have a friend who is an amazing performer, guitarist, and so he sings while people sit down in our open lawn after cutting flowers and just enjoy the beautiful evening. And this is always in July, and I'm not kidding y'all. You'd probably think I'm crazy to have an outdoor event in July, but I'm knocking on whatever wood is out there. The evenings we've had this for the last 4 years have been perfect, just perfect. So a great event that we are doing still at the farm. Another, offering that we had put in probably, 4 or 5 years ago, was our flower share program. So set up just like your typical CSA program. We call it our flower share. But we offer 3 different types: an early season, which is like our spring blooms; late season, which is our late summer annuals, and then an all season, so it's the best of both of those. So we have a specific amount that we sell every year that sell out, and we have repeat customers, offer 2 different pickup locations. We were at Scissortail Park for about 2 years selling flowers, but we actually scaled back to focus on another aspect of our farm. So we left that, but we still have our flower share program where we have people picking up on our farm, and then also at Flora Bodega in Oklahoma City. So those are very popular, and it's a great way to know how many flowers that I can grow, and that product is getting out the door and into our customers' hands. And then, so as the years continued, that first idea that we were going to get our product into designers and florists' hands, it did happen. And that's what we're really focusing on right now, is our wholesale product. And so growing flowers in Oklahoma, as y'all could imagine, especially when you're growing produce, it's unpredictable. Like, our weather is just crazy. And so spring has been very successful for us because we can control a lot of what's happening in our tunnels. Unfortunately, when we talk about our summer annuals in the field, not so much. So we really are putting a lot of emphasis on our wholesale operation and scaling that up quite often, or quite a bit. But you can see these are just some of the flowers that designers have used from our farm in their, for wedding floral, event floral. And yeah, we're really excited about this aspect of our operation. As I mentioned, we do grow flowers year round, but we don't always have